Okay, so just to start with here, for example, let me just use fit here so we can see the whole image. When I took this picture and I looked at it, I thought, oh, okay, I can just take my spot removal tool, that's this here, the icon with the small arrow on the right-hand side. It gets mixed up sometimes with the radial adjustment, with the radial brush. But this is the spot removal tool. And what most of us do is paint over the area we want to remove and ask Lightroom, because this is what Lightroom does, to fix it. And this is normally what we'll get. Lightroom will automatically choose a source area. So let's clarify that. When we first start, we're choosing our destination. We're choosing the thing we want to fix. And once we're done selecting that area that we'd like to fix or hide, Lightroom picks a source area. That's this area here. And that's not very smart at this point. So Lightroom has not done a good job. And I can do one of two things right here. I can tap my / key, and that is the same key as your question mark. And by tapping the / key, Lightroom's going to make some suggestions. And as you can see, Lightroom here is not being that smart. It's selecting this pen that was laying on the counter. It's selecting part of another lid, and it is selecting part of her hand and her paintbrush. So you can see how this is not really working out well. And I can switch here between clone and heal, and you'll see that those two items are also not working. And the difference between clone and heal is clone is a rubber stamp, and it's an exact copy of the source area, this area here. It's an exact copy of this area over this area. Although right now it doesn't quite look like an exact copy, but I see pieces of the hand here. So this is our source, and that's our destination with clone. And when I choose heal, it kind of blends things together. So it's not doing a good job. The other way that I can move this source is by clicking on the pin and dragging it. And if I try to find some more background, you can see it's not really doing a good job here either. So this is a fail. Lightroom has not done a good job, but the reason why it hasn't done a good job is it's not because of me. It's because Lightroom's having a hard time covering this destination area. We don't have enough of similar background. We would want this kind of background here, not this background here, because the light is very different. So we'd need a large area of similar background to cover this lid in order to hide it. So basically, this is where I say Lightroom goes stupid. It doesn't actually work at all. And it would be nice if Lightroom would have a dialog box that says, wait a second, the selection you made cannot be filled to match. But Lightroom does not give you an error message. So then you're kind of stuck trying to figure out why this has happened. And it is because basically we're biting off more than Lightroom can chew. And that's why this has failed. Let's take a look at another situation. And everybody can see my brushes and all that while I'm doing this, right? So I'm not just kind of dragging my cursor around the screen and you can't see what's happening. Just let me know.
Yeah, let us know in the chat, and we can try to adjust things if you can't see.
In this picture, I don't want this bar that runs across the bottom of this scene. And so I can make some adjustments here because I don't want to have a soft edge. I just want to get rid of that bar. So I'm going to move my feather down to about 25, close enough. And my opacity is going to be at 100. And I'm going to just adjust my brush on the fly by tapping my left bracket key. So I want to get rid of this, and I'm going to paint right across my scene. And I'll take that box here too while I'm at it like that. And when I release my mouse click, it looks like Lightroom's done a pretty good job, but here's where I feel it hasn't done a good job. These marks on the building, these holes in the building have been copied. It's what I call a step and repeat pattern. And you'll see these have been copied here, these have been copied here, these have been copied here. And so it's actually just rubber stamped from one section of the building to another.
Idea, can you zoom in a little bit on that?
Yeah, I will. Let's go a little bit closer. So you can see these have been duplicated here and here. This is in Heal, by the way. If I do clone, you can see now that this has copied this area directly over this area, and you can see that there's an abrupt change in the tone of the wall right down here because I've copied this area to this area. In other words, my source area has been copied over to my destination area. However, let me go back to fit. I can adjust this manually. Of course, I can tap my / key and ask it to make some decisions, but you can see it's not doing much other than moving a few pixels left and right. If I drag this all the way up to the top of my scene to grab some wall up here, and I have this in Heal, because you can see, again, this is almost a cut and paste here with the clone. If I tap Heal, I'm not copying these holes anymore. I'm just blending what I chose up here to down here. And you can see I have a better blend. And if I want, I can also, on the fly, adjust my feather. Let me zoom in here for everybody so you can see. So there's my original feather there. And you can see, I hope everyone can see, there's kind of still a bit of a delineation. And if I choose the feather, I can blend that in a little better. And that's better than copying those holes in the wall. And I have a better result here. Still not perfect, but the idea is that Lightroom does a better job in this because we had some better source area to copy over our destination area. So if there aren't any questions about this, I'm going to move ahead and we're going to take a look at how Lightroom fails and how Content Aware in Photoshop can fix something that we can't fix in Lightroom. And that's this image here from last week, actually, from our client Nandi Shah. And I'm just going to set this up a little bit, make a feather, zoom into our image like that. And what I want to do, I'll make this brush a little smaller. What I want to do is I want to take this pepper out. I've decided I don't want this pepper in my photo. And I'm thinking that I can just paint over the pepper and ask Lightroom to replace it. And the first thing Lightroom's going to do is go stupid. It's selected a source area here of black, and it's trying to paint that over the pepper. So that's not very effective. And again, I can tap the / key and ask it to make some other decisions. And if we look at the whole scene here, you'll see that it's reaching out over way past the actual area I've selected to select part of the underlying bowl, another bowl with red tomatoes in it. None of this makes sense. So I'm going to grab this pin on my source and drag it over my rice. And this is a very important point I'd like to make here. And that is this. When you do this kind of work, be sure to zoom in, because things may look like they came out pretty good until you actually look at them close. And then you can see how this has not been that effective. Now I can make some other adjustments here, like change my feather a little bit to try and take in more of the rice. But you'll see I still have a little bit left here of the original pepper. I'm also copying some of the bowl here, because this is my source area here. This is my destination. And I've copied some of this bowl over here, which kind of makes this look a little awkward. So if we were trying to do something that was convincing, we really haven't accomplished that with the spot removal tool. So let's go take a look at how we can go ahead and do this in Photoshop with Content Aware. I'm going to delete these, and the way to delete a pin when you're in Spot Edit is to have the pin selected. It's black right now. That tells me that it's active, and I'm going to tap the delete key to throw it out. All right. So now I'm going to go into Photoshop, and I'm going to basically right-click. We can also control-click, or if you right-click on a PC, or if you're using a mouse, or control-click if you're on a Mac on a laptop. And I'm going to go ahead and choose Edit In and Edit in Photoshop 2020.
And I'll just make a quick note while DA is getting his screen worked out. What happens when you, there we go, we see it.
Okay.
When you edit in Photoshop from Lightroom, Lightroom will make a physical copy of your file right next to the original one, and then it will open up Photoshop, and you'll start to work on that copy. So your original file is still always preserved, but you can bring all of your developed settings over into Photoshop.
Actually, a minor point there is actually it doesn't create something in Lightroom until you do a save in Photoshop.
Yes, very good point. It creates the physical
Yes.
file, but it doesn't bring it back to Lightroom until you've saved.
That is
in
right.
Photoshop.
All right, so I'm going to now, I've just zoomed into it. I've centered my area that I want to work on here in the middle. And I'm also going to now select my lasso tool. Okay, that's up here. And you want to make sure it's the lasso tool, not polygonal and not magnetic. You want to choose the lasso tool. And I'm going to draw a fairly tight lasso around the area that I want to remove, including this leaf here. And I'll tell everybody I'm cheating a little bit because I am using a tablet now. I'm no longer using my trackpad on my laptop. And I'm just going to hold down the Option key to remove a little bit of this extra lasso that I didn't want, like that. So now that I have a selection, these are called marching ants, but this is a selection of the pepper that I want to remove. This is a keyboard shortcut. And the reason why it has to be a keyboard shortcut is there is a more complex version of Content Aware Fill in Lightroom that you will get by choosing Content Aware Fill from the menus. And what we want to do is use the simple Content Aware, and that's done by choosing Shift and then Delete. And Shift Delete will bring up a dialog box like this. And this dialog box has other options. So if you've used it in the past, it may say foreground or background color. You need to make sure it says Content Aware. And you want to use color adaptation. And the blending is normal and opacity is 100. And when I select OK here, if Photoshop will behave, you will see that it has now magically filled this in with content-aware fill. I'm going to type Command D to deselect my selection. And you'll see that this is a much simpler approach to removing anything in an image, as long as you have enough area surrounding your subject to fill it. In this case, we had a lot of similar rice to fill this with, but you'll notice it did it smartly as opposed to the way that Lightroom did it, which was basically like a hammer. And this is really like a scalpel. It's far more sophisticated to getting your end result of removing something fairly large from your photo. So David, do I have time to just do a landscape?
Yeah, I think it would be a good idea.
Okay.
I think it would be very helpful. And we got plenty of time.
Okay, good. So I'm going to just move right over to Lightroom again for a second. Okay, if everybody sees that. And
looks good. And then just a reminder to everybody, when you're in Photoshop and then you save that file, then it will kick it back and Lightroom will automatically add it to your files so that
which
it's
I
seamless.
didn't do.
Right.
Yeah.
But then it would be seamless within your catalog, and it would automatically add it to your catalog, and so it would be available for you, and it would just give it a different rename, typically dash edit.
I'll demonstrate that when I finish with this one. Okay,
perfect.
Great. So right now here, I have this scene and I've already developed it. Again, when we do this kind of work, we want to develop our image first. We want to do our local adjustments second. So we always say global before local. And there's a lot of reasoning behind that, because the way we change an image, if we do local adjustments and we do global changes, it will not look right. So I have this scene here, and I am just going to zoom in here, and I've got these telephone poles I don't want in my scene. And if I select my spot removal tool, I have to be careful because I almost said content aware. If I select my spot removal tool and I just adjust this a little bit and I try to just remove these guys here, I want to just remove these telephone poles, leave that bush, do that. You'll see that, again, on first attempt, Lightroom has not really understood what I wanted. And you'll see here, it's reached over. It looks like it's tried to be smart, but it really hasn't succeeded in, let me go 2 to 1, hasn't really succeeded in getting me that source area that works. Whoops, going the wrong way. There we go. So that's my source area here. That's my destination area here, the destination area where I just painted. And if we zoom in, and again, this is a really important point, that this could look just fine if we did that. We'd think that we might be okay. But when we move in, we can really see that this did not do well. Even if I change my feather, I'm not getting the results that I want. This is not in the right place. So this is becoming a bit of work, and I'm not really having a good time getting things adjusted. Let's just throw this out and go straight out to Photoshop. So I'm going to go ahead and choose Edit In. Again, that's Control click on a laptop and a right click on a PC. Choose Edit in Photoshop, and let me change my screen. All right. So now at this point, I'm going to choose my zoom tool again and zoom in a little so that I can draw accurately around these telephone poles. And again, this is my lasso tool. And I'm just going to lasso these power lines here. I'm going to go right along these bushes. And just like I did in Lightroom, I'm just going to grab that selection. And now, once I tap the Shift and the Delete key, I will see my content-aware fill dialog. It's the same as I had it before, so it's remained the same way. Content-aware with color adaptation. Blending is normal. Opacity is 100%, and I select OK. And again, if Photoshop understands what I want, it fixes the area I want to remove by filling it with information that it figures out. Now, this is a really amazing algorithm. As you might imagine, the first time I saw this, I was just blown away. So you can see that it's pretty much almost unnoticeable that it's removed those telephone poles. And so that's content aware in Photoshop, and that's what we use when Lightroom fails.